Katrina, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Matt. I'm good so far.
Okay. I was just about to ask. I mean, you hopped on and I went, let's just press record and then let's just have a catch up. I just want to compliment you on your background. It looks lovely. You've got a light. It looks very professional. Not sure about mine. So yeah, what have you been up to? What time is it? It's 12 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon here in Dubai. What's your Wednesday been like so far? What have you been up to?
Well, I've started a major intestinal colon cleanse this morning. Interesting. So yeah, it's called Zen Cleanse and it's just one day.
Right.
And every half an hour, I've got to either take a shake or some warm water.
Okay, so during this podcast, the Zen cleanse is going to be taken live. I thought you was going to say every half an hour I have to go and sit on the toilet, and I was going to go, okay, I'll maybe edit that in or we'll edit it out. Okay, so Zen cleanse. So I mean, yeah, how long? One day or
Yeah, well, you've got to prepare 2 days before. So I've been having juices for the last 2 days. And then
wow?
tomorrow and the next day, it's juices again, because this is getting colloidal plaque out of your intestine. So it's pretty hardcore. And then you sit on the toilet apparently tomorrow and the next day and the next day.
Okay, so get a good book for tomorrow. Do some admin. Take the laptop. Yeah. Okay, so you're doing a Zen cleanse. Amazing. And that's all you've been doing today. I suppose prepping for the Zen cleanse is what you would do.
Yeah, I'm taking the day off today. I've got two online clients later this afternoon. Let's see
Oh,
how I feel.
amazing, amazing. I didn't think we'd talk about Zen cleanse, and we'll possibly like loop back to that, and we'll let the listeners leave them on a hook. They'll be going, "Why would she do such a thing?" We'll loop back to that. So before we kick off today's conversation, Katrina, why don't you just introduce yourself to the listeners, who you are? I know a little bit about you already. Who you are and what you do.
So I am Katrina Valenti. I don't know what I am anymore. I've been in the holistic anti-aging industry for 25 years, and I've lived in Dubai for that long as well. So yeah, I've been in it longer than that. Um, and I've been very well known for facials and everything to do with anti-aging. I travel the world as a visiting practitioner. I go to all the high-end spas like Anantara, Six Senses, and I offer my services within the spa. So I do facials, different kinds of massage, healing, and coaching. But the last few years, I've been kind of leaving the aesthetic world behind a little bit, and I've been focusing much more on healing modalities, relationship coaching, and sex therapy.
Now that was actually one. Well, we met actually to let the listeners know. We met a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? On a boat in Dubai. I suppose you'd describe it as a marketing sort of networking event. I suppose you would call it that. A wonderful Alex House of Social, who we both work with. So I met you on this boat, and we're just as you're doing, you're networking and having conversations. And I was listening to particularly the stuff you were talking about in terms of sex and intimacy. And obviously, you've been in the wellness space for so long that it dawned on me that this is a topic that's probably not discussed often, but for me, it falls under that banner of well-being. I mean, it's actually a massive component of well-being that we don't really talk about. So I was listening to what you did, and I said, "Look, wow, let's get you on the podcast." So, I mean, there are lots of areas, and we could possibly have you back on. The anti-aging sphere is huge, but relationships, sex, intimacy is sort of where I'd like to take the conversation today. I mean, I suppose I tell you what I've been doing this week, actually, Katrina. I've been telling my male clients and male members of classes that I'm having a conversation today, and they know I do the podcast. And the question I've thrown out to them is I've just gone to them, if I said the word intimacy to you, what does it mean? And I've got this is a small sample size, probably about 12 men, but really just the same response. First, the eyebrows move. There's that look of like, why are you asking me that, Matt? I thought we were, I know, no, 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 not you and me, just in general. And the response normally, typically, is just, it's to do with sex, isn't it? And I was like, Yeah, that's an aspect, but there is a lot more. So this conversation is for men and women, but particularly my male listeners as well. I think we should delve in. So I suppose the first question I'd throw to you, Katrina, is no intimacy. Before we delve into the physicalities, I mean, what is intimacy? Why is it important?
Look, intimacy doesn't have to be sex at all. Intimacy is about connection. It's about being present with your partner, talking to them, delving into your deepest, darkest secrets, your hopes, your dreams, being completely transparent, taking your time in bed with your partner. That is intimacy. And it doesn't have to be sex. It's about caressing. It's about paying attention to your other half, touching them, kissing them, this kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I delved in and did a little bit of research myself, and I didn't realize that there's obviously the physical aspect is one that we automatically think of, but there's sort of in the emotional, the intellectual, the spiritual, the experiential, and I didn't realize that these were I just thought they were components of like, oh, it's good to do that with your partner. It's good to have shared values or conversations that you find engaging. It's nice to travel together. I knew they were important parts of relationships, but it wasn't until I looked into it. It was like, actually, there's a whole like this is a big thing, intimacy, and like, spending time going on trips together and making time for each other, making time just for conversations about not just how the kids going, how's work, how life in general are also really important parts of, I suppose, the emotional aspect of intimacy, which is probably where men tend to struggle.
Yeah, I mean, look, men were not built to be emotional creatures. So the mistake women make is they want men to be like them, and we're not. And it's a fundamental mistake that men and women make. We expect you to be like us, and you expect us to be like you. But what you have to do is look at it from a woman's point of view, and we have to look at it from the male point of view. So if we could both understand how we are very different, and what is going to work in a conversation with me and my girlfriend is not going to work when I'm talking to my partner.
Mm.
And, it's things like men, you can't, it's better to be more direct with men. Would you do this? Will you do this? That's a command. Don't ask a man, can you do it? Could you do it? Because you're implying that maybe he cannot. So it's silly little things like this. Language matters as well.
Yeah, it's huge actually. And actually, from just as a curious man, I mean, I want to obviously delve this conversation towards men, but as a curious man, I mean, what is it that, from your experience, the clients you've worked with, the couples you've worked with, what is it that men need to probably be aware of? What are we missing when it comes to intimacy with regards to females? So we could be useful to our male listeners.
Um, what is it? Think about all that. It's about understanding how the female brain works. And it's about being more present. Women want attention. You have to give women attention.
Yeah.
You come in, and it's vice versa. Like, we have to go back to basics. We've gotten lost in this day and age with women becoming much more masculine.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't work in the home. It's okay to
Mm.
go out, make your own money. But when you come home, remember who you are. You are a woman. You are the loving, nurturing, supporting presence of your man. And rightly so, he is the protector, the provider, the leader. And we've just
Mm.
gotten this completely mixed up in society. And that's why we're all sitting single.
It's such an yeah, no, no, it's such a valid point. I mean, there is so much information. I suppose you look at polarizing characters like Andrew Tate, and regardless of what you think, I don't have an opinion. I'm not going to share it on the podcast, but there seems to be this confusion and there's this vacuum where characters like Andrew Tate are popping up because, my experience, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to be part of an organisation in the UK called Men Speak. I'm doing a facilitator training at the moment. We hold regular men's groups and we sit and we talk. And there is definitely confusion with regards to the man's role in life. And I think that confusion comes into how we should be interacting with our partners. The whole thing of holding the door open, or that kind of stuff
No,
can be
I mean,
confusing.
for me, that is just, I never bought into feminism. I think that was the worst thing that ever happened to women. Look, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't be successful in your own right. Absolutely. But when you're in a partnership, you have to be the feminine, all receiving energy. If you ask any man, he will tell you he wants a feminine woman. And the men that I've seen that are castrated by their wives or girlfriends because they're very dominant, there's going to be resentment on each side. You've got the woman who's always in control, bossing him around. She's going to get fed up with that because that's not intrinsically how we were built. And she wants a man to just for once take care of her. And then the guy is completely emasculated. He's got no voice. So he's going to find resentment because he has to be the leader. He has to be the dominant partner. So people that tell me that this works in their dynamic, long term, I very much doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting concept. I mean, me and my wife discussed this, and me and my wife have a very cool relationship. But there is that energy within the house. Now I reflect it. My wife is very strong. She's bright. She's independent, but as a partnership, it works. And there's definitely a masculine and feminine energy. But we discuss quite often, the debates around why, from a young age. I don't know if this ties in, but that even at school, the bad boy. Why is it she always picks the bad boy, or she's got a really stable partner? And I don't know if this is it. It's that innate, the bad boy represents that masculine energy, even though maybe he's not the provider long term. I don't know. Is that what's going on? Is that why so many of friends of ours that we know, not us specifically, but people talk about the fact that she was in a loving relationship or she's single, she keeps falling for these knobs basically who are just who epitomize masculine energy.
Yeah, I mean, we all like a bad boy, it has to be said.
I mean, yeah, but what's the bad? What is the bad boy thing? That's my question. Is it because the bad boy is depicting those masculine traits?
It is. And they're dominant. Like a masculine man, a true divine masculine. We talk about the divine masculine and divine feminine. He doesn't take any nonsense. Like, he's very straightforward. He's a doer. He's a go-getter. He goes out. He makes the money. He's thriving. He's fighting for what he wants. He's innovative. And that's his job. Don't expect him to come home and then, be all emotional with you. Masculine men do not do that. It's not how they are built, and it's not how they're supposed to be. That's our job. Okay, we've got the yin yang polarity, black, white, male, female. You've got to have that polarity in order to come together in balance.
But in saying that, there's still a role. So you mentioned something at the top of this conversation, which I've tried to adopt these skills, which is that attention. So you don't have to be sitting there pouring your heart out about, the trials and tribulations of your day. But something I have learned, and I've learned that in particularly with Karen, is to actually just be present. Ask her how her day was and listen to her. I don't do it all the time. I quite often bore her with my little problems and my business plans, but that's something I've really tried to just move away from that self-centered. Just, as you say, just be present and listen. And not try and problem solve all the time. I don't know if this is right, but not throwing up solutions to every issue that Karen has. Just sometimes, I don't always do it.
Yeah, we just want to be heard. We don't, and then because men always want to give you a solution. That's how they are. They can't help themselves. But sometimes A woman just wants to be heard. So again, it's all about communication. She could say to you, babe, I want to talk to you about someone. I know you're going to give me a solution. I just want you to hear me. I don't need anything. So it's as simple as that.
And things like chores around the house. Where does this lie? No, I've been out now. This is me talking to friends, not just reflecting on my marriage, but just simple stuff. This is another thing I think men are. I certainly think there are differences, and I think it's hardwired. I'll give you an example, and I joke and laugh about this a lot. But I might be in a yoga studio or whatever, and one of the girls will say, "Matt, I'm looking for something." I'll go, "Matt, it's in the back," and I'll go, "Do you know what? Like, not seeing stuff." Like, and I go to the women I know, is this all men? And they're like, yeah, pretty much. So, like, spotting something, or actually, I'll give you a better example. When me and my wife first met, right, I lived in Milton Keynes and she lived in North London. She came up to visit me one weekend and I had sort of tidied the house up because I thought Karen was coming. But what she pointed out to me, made me laugh thinking about that. She goes to me, why are those shoes over there? And I'll go, I don't know. I just like, they're just, I don't know. I just throw them there. So, how long's that jacket been lying on that? I have like these two big sofas. How long's that jacket been lying on that sofa? I'll go, didn't even know it was there, to be honest. So I think, and Karen has taught me that there are, and I like it now because I like a bit of order. There are like little places that you put stuff. So our lens for stuff.
It's not your job. That's a woman's job. That's why we need to go back. I mean, look, say what you like about Andrew Tate. I think he's the best thing that ever happened to men. I mean, he goes a bit too far sometimes, but if I've listened to many, many of his podcasts and videos, this guy's got it right. And he is promoting proper masculinity. We are not men. Women are not men. We will never be men. We need men to protect us. If my car breaks down, who do I go to? A woman? No, I go to a man.
Oh, okay, controversial views here, Katrina. There are many women who possibly listen to this. I mean, I would retract actually. I'd reverse it slightly, and I would say when it comes to an individual like Andrew Tate, I would say, and full disclosure, that some of his messaging, I haven't consumed a lot of his content, but I will say that there are polarizing views with Andrew Tate, and I get it. In this polarized world, it's quick to jump on and say he's bad, he's good, but I mean, I certainly think there's something the guy is saying that's resonating with men because he's so popular. But there's an argument that maybe, like you say, he goes too far. Or he's been involved in this, that, and the other. But actually, and I respect the fact that you have these views, and I do believe in them to a degree. But let's say you have. So back in the day, let's talk 30, 40 years ago, the dynamics, the economic dynamics, the educational dynamic of men and women has changed. So there are a lot of women out there who are earning more than, say, men. It's quite a common thing. In Dubai, actually, I've noticed there are females who are just, CEOs of companies, they're the breadwinners, and there are some stay-at-home husbands, and actually it works. There's the insurance, they pick the kids up. Yeah, I'm just wondering, like you say, do you think these roles and dynamics, I do, I get what you're saying, by the way. I'm not trying to challenge you, but how does that work? Or I'll give you another example. We're both working hard. We come home. And the female in the relationship goes, I've just done 14-hour day, and so is the husband. But is there a situation where maybe we break up the chores at home? Maybe I do a bit of the washing up.
Number one, I'm sorry. Number one, she shouldn't be doing a 14-hour day. That is your job.
Okay, right. Controversial views in the model.
Like, the woman should be at home. She should be looked after if she wants to work, because we are the all receiving energy. We are the womb. Okay. We are the space to come back to. If I keep doing, like, hands up, I'm single. I've never been married. I've always provided for myself, A to Z. I am that woman. But when you're doing all the time, where is there any space for a man or a relationship? There is none.
So maybe, yeah, I'm just thinking maybe what you're saying is that this is where conflict is maybe happening. But maybe, I'm just giving it a flip side, maybe as men, modern men, whatever that is, who can still be a bit alpha, we could maybe have a bit more awareness about the shift. Now, I agree with what you're saying. I don't definitely agree that there are fundamental energies around masculine and feminine, and the whole cleaning. Men are not as clean. There are different dynamics in that sense. But if you have a wife or a partner who is working really hard and is career driven, would it be fair to say the man could chip in, and he could? Obviously, I get that you come in and you want to still be in control of that space, but maybe there's a role for men to, pitch in a little bit than maybe we did before.
You have to choose. You have to
Yeah.
choose how you want to live your life,
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
me, there's nothing more desirable than when I see a truly masculine man that just takes control. He has presence. He has money. He has a business. Usually masculine men have their own businesses or they're entrepreneurs. It comes with the territory. Because they're chasing after, the next thing. They've got ideas, they've got what's the word? I get lost the word sometimes. They have the drive to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of I do I agree with you to a point, but one thing I would throw into the mix in terms of this conversation is when you look at the state of men's mental health, and I see that in the work I do with Men Speak, and you look at stats on male suicide, 3/4 of suicides are men. I definitely think there is a need for men to talk more. And there are only so many winners. If everyone was a go-getter and a winner, the pie would be, cut in half, and you need those go-getter men to provide jobs for other men. I understand that, but I do think there's definitely. I mean, it is. I mean, I did a podcast with a guy called Kenny Marmorella de Cruz. I've done a couple, and it was all about men's mental health. And in preparation for the podcast, I looked at the stats on men's mental health. And do you know what I thought, Katrina? I thought it was a modern thing. I thought it was like, modern world, and like there was this huge rise. And it's like, nah, men have been topping themselves since the 50s and 60s. So I definitely think there is something going on. But in terms of, let's bring it back to, like I say, the relationship, the energy of men and women. People can debate that, but I definitely think there's some. I definitely agree with some of the stuff you just said. I perhaps disagree with some of the stuff, but I do firmly believe this conflict on roles and status in society, which is so mixed now, I think is causing problems to men and women. And here's a stat actually. So the whole dating situation. So it's an interesting stat. I think it's one of the swipey dating apps. They released their data. It's 10% of the men are getting 80% of the attention on these apps. So what it's causing is it's causing the huge percentage of women are chasing the same guys. They're not swiping on the other guys. And the guys at the top are like kids in a sweet shop. They're kind of like, well, I'm getting all this attention, so why would I want to settle down? And hence there's a huge group of women trying to chase this small percentage of men who are not ready to settle down. And I think that's causing issues for men and women alike. An average looking guy is getting no attention on the dating apps, and all the women are chasing the same guys. So I think sometimes perhaps this dynamic, this conflict about we can have it all, basically. I suppose that's the term. I can have the career, I can have the family, I can have the relationship, I can have it all. And the question, I suppose, is can you?
You cannot. I don't think you can.
No.
I think the reason men have so much mental health is because they don't have a good woman. This is where intimacy comes in. If you've got a solid partner who you can go and talk to about anything, the woman has to be the rock. The saying behind every good man, there's an even better woman.
No, it popped into my head there. I was about to say that, yeah.
And in my observation, I mean, I've been traveling around for 15 years now, treating high net worth individuals, royalty, celebrities, and I can tell you, without exception, every single woman that is with them, the rich man, is there to provide and to be of service and to be there for him 100%. And
Okay,
that
so
allows him to be the success that he is.
when we talk about this, we're talking about those pillars of intimacy, which I referenced at the top, which is the emotional, the spiritual, the experiential, the intellectual. Obviously, men will come home, and if they're at the top, they've got no one to share with. They're quite often probably sharing with their partner at home. And then, yeah, and I suppose with that as well comes the physical aspect, which we'll delve into because I'm interested to know more about the physical side of intimacy. But I mean, does that fundamentally come down to men not being able to communicate in the first place? Because it's like, it sounds like a catch-22. Like I say, strong men don't share, they're not emotional, they're not communicators. But
I have to disagree with that. I mean, look, I've been a therapist for 25 years. I do have a gift that people can open up to me, and I'm very good with men. And men just need the right person to share with, and then it all comes spilling out. And I think what you're doing, Matt, is very, very beneficial because men do need more men's groups to share with men. But I've certainly, when a guy comes to me, the woman will come in first. We'll have a chat. It's probably, even if it's a facial, we get talking. She's having this problem. Or maybe I'll send him to you. Then she'll maybe send him in for a massage, and then we get talking. And then the coaching starts.
right,
And then I talk to them separately. Then I bring them together. So it's just, so many couples don't really know the other person that well, even though they've been together for years.
And I suppose it could be, I mean, when you look at it, it's these roles that have been assigned, and maybe this idea of masculinity and men don't share. And it's maybe passed down from generation to generation. But I do think we're possibly at a stage now, certainly with the work I've done in local high schools, and you go in and talk to sixth formers, there's still the boys don't share as much as the girls. But you're right. What I've found from just men's only groups where it's just a safe space for men to share is that, yeah, men are emotional. Men do want to share, but I think there perhaps needs to be more of a space for men to learn about this stuff. Because don't get me wrong, I grew up in the world of sports and banter, and that's all part of a masculine energy. And I need that. I need that now. I need silly banter, boys being boys. It fills my cup. And I definitely need that. So I recognize what you're saying about the energy, but I think there is definitely something missing in terms of being able to label these emotions and then being able to express these emotions. Because I suppose there's always a fear about being vulnerable with their partner because maybe they don't want to be perceived a particular way. So I suppose it's finding that balance. So in terms of obviously we have the emotional component, and I think there's definitely a need, and there's coaches like yourself. We've talked about this area, but let's talk about the physical side, which is, this is important for relationships, physical intimacy. Yeah, over to you, Katrina. What do we think? She's right.
My 30 minute
Okay, Katrina's what is that you're pouring into your glass?
it's just water, but I've got to put this enzyme. This is the first time I'm tasting it.
Oh no. Okay, this is live on the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. So the Zen cleanse is going on.
Very thick.
So it's like syrup, is it? Show it up to the camera so we can see it. Oh my God! What if it goes wrong and you vomit, projectile vomit? Okay, right. I'm all right. Drum roll, ladies and gentlemen. This is all part of So we had 2 days of cleansing. This is the main bulk. Excuse the pun, but main bulk of the cleanses today. And then, all right. So how was that? You're now sipping the cleanse.
Okay. It's kind of vinegary.
Oh, is it? Your lip drop then vinegary. Okay, you have to drink that whole. Don't drink it all in case you do throw up live on the podcast. Sip it. Yeah. Don't. Oh, it's quite nice. Obviously, you've gone back and drink. All right. So that's just got the palate fired up in preparation. Okay. So
In a nutshell, I believe that if you can take all your problems into the bedroom, you can sort out anything.
oh my God, tell us more, Katrina. There's no need for these men's groups. So where do we start? Like, so obviously,
Now,
is it?
look, I've just been on our tantra retreat in Bali, and I was learning 2 tantric massages, and there was 30 of us, 15 men, 15 women, approximately. The men in the room, without exception, were absolutely loving the massages. There's no sex, but there's a bit of, can I say that word, genital touch?
Yeah, of course, of course.
But it's
Yeah.
but see, tantra is very misconstrued.
I was going to ask if you could rewind and like if someone's sitting there thinking I'm signing up for a tantra retreat. What does
Yeah.
people think of tantric and like Sting pops to mind, doesn't he? Sitting there with his abdominals, having sex for 6 hours. That's the kind of the mainstream of tantric sex is Sting still. So
It,
someone's signing up to a tantra retreat. What is it they're signing up for?
please go on to my podcast because I interview my teacher and friend Dharmaraj, and on YouTube I have a podcast, and he explains it so eloquently. Look, it's about love, first of all. It's about coming back to yourself. It's about intimacy. It's about honoring that other person on a soul level. So it's not about the physical act of sex. It's about
Mm,
everything else that surrounds that. So let's say foreplay, for want of a better word. But what the tantric massages are, is it's honoring the whole body and not separating the genitals.
yeah.
Because we always separate that, right? It's like, oh no, we
Mm,
can't talk about that. You can't touch that. But in Tantra, they honor the whole body as one. It is not separate. And I think there's just been such we can't talk about it. It's not polite to talk about it. Girls certainly can't talk about it. And it's
mm,
like we are sexual beings. It's like life force energy. When you have a truly mind-blowing orgasm, your energy raises to another level, which in turn can attract all kinds of abundance, money, opportunities, great health, lots of energy. I mean, this is a fact. So, and with men, because you always go to sleep after you've had a no, that's because you're doing it wrong. If
well,
you
all
have
depends. Well, sorry, Katrina. All depends what time you do it. I'll just add that in there. If you like it in the day, possibly not, but maybe. Sorry, I just thought I'd butt in there because some of us do prefer, yeah, but they're more sleepy afterwards. Absolutely.
So, there's all these things to consider, but most people are not having proper sex. Most people are not. You should be having, like I gave you your little list, Matt.
You did. I had my list. I know. I mean, I shared it with a couple of my male clients, and they look exhausted when I told them. Can I just share? So when we was on this boat trip, Katrina, when she got off, she did her presentation of all her services, coaching, the physical intimacy stuff, and she gave us a little handout. And on the handout, the one that jumped off the page was not so much you should be having sex 3 times a week, but it was you should be having sex 3 times a week at least for 2 hours at a go. So she's got it on the screen. Give presence in your relationship when your partner. Read it out for the listeners. Yeah.
So give presence in your relationship when your partner talks. Stop what you are doing and listen. Look at them. It's that simple. They
Yeah, that was yeah.
times has Karen walked in the door and you're on your phone and you're like, oh hi love, did a good day, yeah.
Mm,
Or you're doing something else. How often do we do that,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so it's about just being, just for even a minute, touching them, giving them a hug, giving them a kiss. I mean,
Yeah.
a hug is so relevant in today's society. We need touch. Babies need touch. If they didn't have touch, they would die,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Number two, You have to strip it back to the basics. Be totally and brutally honest with your partner about your likes, your dislikes, your fantasies, your grievances. That's preventing you from having a fully transparent relationship. It's
Mm.
hard, but it will free you.
Yeah,
Because remember, assumption is always a lie. So we don't say what we want to say because we're frightened of how the other person's going to react, right? But nine
yeah,
times out of 10, that person will always react differently to how you imagine it's going to be.
yeah. And I suppose when you say that, it's about transparency. You'd be transparent about who you are. It's about being authentic, and that would include your sexual preferences also. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Have regular sex at least 3 times a week for at least 2 hours a time.
Yeah. Now that's the one that exhausted some of my clients when I shared it with them. It was the 2 hours. But I did say you haven't got to be popping the blue Smarties and on the job for 2 hours. I said
It's about the touch, it's about the foreplay, it's about the kissing, it's about looking at each other.
mm,
It's so much more than just intercourse. Intercourse is the very last stage
mm,
in all of it. And what men need to understand is that ejaculation and orgasm are two separate things within your body. So you can actually learn to orgasm without ejaculation, which will
what?
actually, yes, which
Okay.
will actually, and this is how tantric massage helps because we take you through an ebb and a flow. So you don't get so aroused that there's no turning back. So it helps you to control yourself so you can go for much longer. Because here's the thing, women can have multiple orgasms many times. Men only tend to can go one round and then it's over. So
Mm,
what then transpires from that is that a woman is often not fully satisfied. So it's a man's job to learn how he can fully satisfy his woman. And if you can have an orgasm without ejaculation, you can stay hard for literally hours and hours on end.
Now I can see if the men listening to this now are thinking, okay, Katrina, I'm interested in that. Tell me more. So what you're saying is a bit like training. You're going to the point of no return, but you're not crossing that line. So you train, it's like a skill.
Yeah, it is something you have to learn, but it can be learned by every living person on the planet, woman included. So what this does is it brings your arousal to a much more heightened state, um, which in turn gives you a much more intense orgasm. Like people are having full body orgasms. You can have an orgasm talking to your partner online when you get that connected. So I'm
Mm,
not talking about having sex with random people. I'm talking about people in committed relationships.
right. Yeah. I mean, it does make sense purely from a physiological standpoint. Anyone that knows anything about physiology knows that there are receptors in the lips, there are receptors on the inside, all over your skin. There is information being fed back into the nervous system, and the brain's taking it on board. And I think we're losing that. And just backtracking to what you said about hugging, the technical term they call it allo grooming. So just allo grooming this all these receptors, like yeah, I think there's a lot to be said, and I think there's a lot to be said about and I think this is where men could possibly learn these skills. Not so much, I mean, the having an orgasm and not, ejaculating, that's a skill all men would like to learn. But I think, that would be practice. But I think the practice of being present and touch is something you're gonna have to almost force yourself to do it as a man if it's not your natural state. But like any habit, nutritional habit, a movement habit, a meditation habit, if you do it regularly enough, it becomes, almost part of it. And there are so many relationships out there now where, partners have been together 20, 25, 30 years. There are kids involved where that physical aspect of intimacy is gone. But you hear the term sexless relationships, it's kind of they function obviously along the other lines, but it is an important aspect. I do get it.
you've got to ask yourself, do I want to be with this person? Do I love this person enough? We're not having sex, but do I want to leave her or him? If the
Yeah.
answer is no, then you can work on that.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to have the best sex in your life on a regular basis? Who doesn't want that? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I would throw in. I mean, I this is something I was interested to talk to you about as well, and it's the effect of pornography, which I don't think has helped in the modern world. And the reason I mention it is that quite a few years back when I was in the UK, I did a big part of my job was stroke rehab. So we'd help people who had a stroke, would rehab them from stroke, and I had to read books around neuroplasticity. And I always remember this is a few years back reading a book by a guy called Norman Doidge, and it was The Brain That Fixes Itself, and it's all about neuroplasticity and how we can retrain the brain even when someone loses a part of their brain. And there was a chapter in there on the impact of pornography, just to highlight the influence of neuroplasticity. And when I read about it, I remember at the time thinking, this is like 10, 15 years ago, thinking, well, this is quite serious. And when I fast forward now and I think about the modern world where every smartphone, kids included, young men, have access to pornography, I mean, it's pretty frightening. And I get the feeling that this is interfering with relationships with partners. I don't know what your views were on the role of porn.
look, like I said, go and watch this podcast because he explains it very well. The problem with porn, men watch it and they'll get stimulated for a certain length of time and they'll watch the same kind of thing. Then that's not doing it for them anymore. So they'll go to the more hardcore stuff and they'll watch that for a certain length of time. Then that starts to not really stimulate them very much. So they go even deeper. And then when you get to a real live woman in front of you, it's just not exciting anymore. And men think that that's how women want to be, for a better word.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not at all, at all.
No,
I mean, he'll tell you, do not watch porn. Don't do it. Because it
yeah.
overstimulates the brain, it overstimulates your genitals, and then you've got nowhere to go from there. It's very, very dangerous and very, very damaging.
I mean, it's a problem for youngsters. I mean, I was just looking at some of the stats and like erectile dysfunction. 23% of men under the age of 35 suffer from erectile dysfunction. I'm like, what the fuck? And then they've got this one called um, delayed ejaculation. They call it the technical term anorgasmia, which is kind of like this is men who are it's men that are using porn heavy users of porn. This thing affects, and basically when they get into real life situations, they can't come. 17 to 58% of men can't come. I mean, and I think about it from a neuroplastic standpoint. I think, and it's probably affecting women because, young women will be watching porn as well as men. So it makes you wonder what's going on for young people now, like what females think their role is in the bedroom. It's like, it is for me. I mean, social media is scary enough. The
Yeah, I mean, with
porn,
everything, you can do everything over the net now. And there's a lot of, this is why OnlyFans has become so big, because you don't actually have to interact physically. And there was a very interesting documentary I watched where there was this girl in America and her husband was literally sitting on the sofa while she's on webcam, like getting off with this guy. And he was in Australia, very overweight, quite unattractive. And they'd built a relationship and he was her main source of income. And so they decided they were going to meet and they'd say, I love you and all of this. I mean, it was like they were in a relationship, but no physicality. She flies
wow,
to America and meets him at Australia. And of course, it was a disaster.
Mm.
Of course, it was a disaster. And then reality hit. And then, he was hoping that something would come out of it. And she was just totally disappointed and she wished she'd never went. And it was just a real reality check for both of them. And so this is the way the world is going. And that's why connection is more important now than ever before.
no, I agree. I mean, it's It's frightening. I mean, without sounding crude, I was talking to a friend of mine about this recently, and I said, like, I was born in 1976, so as an adolescent coming up through the ranks, right? And this is going to sound really crude, but you know, as a men, we had to develop what we call the wank bank. Yeah, it was like imagination was key, and if you got your hands on one pornographic magazine that an older brother of a friend had, it was like that was it. But nowadays, I'm just like, I was joking to my friends, like teenage boys, full of hormones, you know, and this exposure, I mean, it is truly frightening. But if someone is, as you say, I mean, porn addiction is a completely different thing. But let's talk about some tips and tricks for men. Let's say, you know, erectile dysfunction, not so much erectile dysfunction, but men's testosterone might be dipping as they age, libido goes down, hedonic adaptation. How could a couple or a guy listening to this, what sort of things could they explore if they want to? If
Look,
they reinvigorate
first of
this stuff.
all, first of all, men shouldn't be having a wank. First of
No
all,
wanking. Okay.
no,
Okay.
if you can help it, because what you can do with that energy is you can use it to create, but you need to learn how to do that. And this
Right.
is why we're telling you that you can have an orgasm but no ejaculation, because every time you ejaculate, it takes some time off your lifespan, actually.
There's a lot of
That's
men listening to this going, Jesus Christ, I gave up smoking. That was a waste of time. But I do hear what you're saying. They could the life energy. Yes, absolutely. So tip number
you
one.
get a lot of men that are just addicted to having a wank, and then they'll do that instead of going and trying to build a relationship with a
Mm,
real life woman.
I know. No, it's true. It's true. I've listened to some stuff about that. Yeah. Uh, yeah.
I mean,
Men who.
I think I told you that I went last May. I went on 15 dates in 15 days, and I blogged about it. You'll have to
Right.
follow me on Instagram, Katrina Valenti, #1. It's all there. And I went on each day, I blogged about it, and I'll tell you what I really learned from it is that men, the way they came, first of all, the way they dressed, very few of them made any effort. And I'm sitting thinking to myself, did they see my picture? See what I look like? Like, do you not want to make an effort? You have 3 seconds to make a first impression on somebody, then it's gone. So, I would go casual, but I'd have my makeup on, my hair was decent, whatever. And there'd be no effort. And do you know why? Because they could swipe along who's next. That's why.
Mm,
There's
I
too
mean,
much
yeah.
choice in today's society because
Yeah.
of apps.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I definitely think it's an issue for, like I say, men and women. I think it's going both ways. There's too much choice. There's this instant gratification in all respects. You know, because I can hop onto OnlyFans, I can go on pornography, I can go on a date, I can fill that hole in my soul with food. I can press a button, some guy from Talabat turns up or Deliveroo, and I've got as much. I know we do live in this world. So let's rewind again, though. So could you? I don't know if you can explain it in like five. How does a man have an orgasm without ejaculating? Are we talking the same sensation you would get, or is this a different kind of orgasm?
It's a much better orgasm.
Okay. But then you could go again afterwards.
I'm
No, but you've worked your go. So you could do that, and then you could go an hour later, you go, I'll have another one. But then that might create addiction in itself. Could you imagine men that have multiple orgasms? They're bad enough as it is.
Yeah, but you kind of need a woman to do that with.
Okay, okay. And actually, going back to what you said, the difference between if you're saving up, you're not masturbating, you're saving up, you're going to have more energy for life, you're going to be more creative, you're going to be more, you have more vitality, I assume, if you're not, you know, getting the tissues out, and it's quite shameful. As a guy, there is an element of shame attached to it. No man feels like re-energized after he's just knocked one out. Do you know what I mean? It's like not the same way you do when you've had sex with your partner. And I think that's the important thing. Like when there's obviously a chemical response, you feel revitalized when you've had sex.
But also, when this woman has filled you up, she's taken care of you, she's been present with you, she's told you how amazing you are, how good you make her feel. That's euphoria in itself, you know?
Yeah,
So the two are like worlds apart. You can't compare it.
no. So in terms of some ideas and tips on how couples, perhaps, let's say you have a couple comes to you and they say, okay, we're happy in a relationship, but the physical intimacy side is not just there. Sexless relationship. Let's say they've got kids, they've been together forever, they met at school, they're in their 40s or 50s now, and they start working with you. I mean, just to give people an idea of what this journey might look like, what sort of work could they expect working with an individual like yourself?
Well, I first have to find out what the problem is from her as an individual. And then I have another session with him and get his side of the story, because there's always two sides of the story, right?
Of course.
I'll do work with each of them. Like, we do a little bit of coaching work. We go back to the mother-father issues, because that is where the problems lie before the age of 7. So all our beliefs, values, all lie with how we were brought up. So, I'll do a little bit of work on that with each of them. And then, usually when you're talking to them separately, they've both got very different viewpoints. Very different viewpoints. So that's a problem in itself. And then when I bring them together, I do exercises, like simple exercises that they can do together, like the one I did at the boat show.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that. Yeah, yeah. You wouldn't mind
So,
describing to listeners what that looks like, people that listen on audio.
okay, so you have to sit. It's called yabiyam, the yabiyam position in Sanskrit. So your partner's sitting on the floor in a cross-legged position. You get on top of him and you wrap your arms around the back of him, so you're both facing each other, intertwined. He has his arms around you, you have your arms around him, and you just look at each other. I mean, when you look into someone's eyes, because none of us do it for any
Yeah.
length of time, it's super uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable, because the eyes truly are the windows to the soul. When you look into somebody's eyes like that, they cannot hide from you. They cannot hide. And if you really pay attention, you can really see how they're feeling, what they're thinking. And then you just hug. So, our chakras are the energy portals that run down the center line. So you'd be on them so that you're chakra to chakra from the base to the top. And you just sit, you place your head, you get comfortable. And you can sit like that for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And
I mean,
then the body starts to relax.
and I was going to say, when you did that demonstration on the boat, even though everyone was there and they're, wow, we couldn't do that because we naturally feel uncomfortable doing that, especially in the modern world. I get it. Like, I instinctively get it. I know if you're able to sit, that's intimacy. Like, if you can sit and just stare and feel comfortable in that space, then you're going to feel comfortable opening up and sharing your feelings and thoughts. It's not just,
It brings in a certain amount of vulnerability.
yes, that's what I was looking for. Yeah, absolutely. I get that. And I suspect that's what it is. It's about, you know, we're talking men don't have to suddenly start to, find spaces to share your emotions and feelings and share your frustrations, but share it with other men. But just learn to be able to be vulnerable, still turn up as that masculine energy and that provider, but have and I suppose that's about self-esteem within an individual. If you've got enough self-esteem, you've got enough self-love, you're able to be vulnerable about here I am, this is what I'm about. So that intimacy thing, that would be something you would work with couples with in therapy. They would sit and they would do this thing.
Yeah. Show them lots of different exercises, how to caress your partner. What sexual preferences do you have? Because there's categories. like, you know, some people like touch, other people like visual things. Like, you know, he might like you to dress up in nice lingerie,
Yeah.
or the woman would just like you to just touch her and caress her and stroke her hair. We all have different love languages. So do you really know what your partner's is? Most people don't. It's a
Yeah.
style.
I mean, I read the book when it was all over social media, the Love Languages book, and I think it's what's the five? I think it's like acts of service, words of affirmation, touch, receiving gifts. There's a list of them, and
Yeah.
I kind of figured it out. But I suspect, I don't know if I'm wrong here, Katrina. There's physical touch is one thing, but I suspect physical touch within sex or intimacy, physical intimacy is probably different. There are probably areas that your partner is first to be touched in, and it's even like men's skills.
Here's another fun fact.
Go on.
A man can have from taking your clothes off to orgasm. It can be done. It's the average, I think, is 4 minutes. A woman takes 20 minutes to get 20 to 40 minutes to get warmed up. So
Wow.
we will often find that the man will go straight for the genitals very quickly because that's how he perceives to be validated.
Right.
So because he perceives validated, the tip for the woman is you should touch his genitals quickly, but the woman doesn't want any touch down there until she's fully aroused. And that takes up to 40 minutes, 20 to 40 minutes. So do you see the difference? Most
Yeah,
people
no,
know that.
yeah. And then what you're left with a female who's not feeling satisfied because she hasn't been, yeah. So, I mean, does this have necessarily, I mean, I've read and heard of people saying that this can start, when you say 2 hours, it could start on a day, just the simple touching and,
Absolutely. It
okay.
sounds messages earlier on in the day. I was going to say that earlier.
Ah,
This is foreplay. You get the mind going because women are very mental. They need emotional connection. So, and then the man, I won't say always want sex because not all men always want sex. They also need some time to get warmed up. I mean,
yeah.
I've friends like that. They can't
Well,
just.
actually, yeah. I mean, this is something I spoke to with friends over the years. It's like when it comes to sex, right? Younger years, you're all out, hey, going on the pool, going to nightclubs, doing your thing. The act of sex, there is one component which has to be present, which is the man has to have an erection. And it's like, and I used to say that to my pals. I used to say it seems a bit unfair. Like go out and get bladdered, whatever, and you can't get one up or whatever. Or so there's a direct correlation. Whereas as a female, I'm not saying, but there is no, you can partake in the act of sex and not really be that present. I always felt like men are, and thank God. I mean, not that I use it myself, but at any stage I do, the blue Smarties, Viagra, came along and saved many, many older relationships, but also caused a big spike in STDs. Did you notice? There was a huge spike in STDs in old people's homes. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they're massive. Old people's homes, they're all at it.
But this is another thing. The men cannot fake it. Women can fake it all day long. And they do.
I know. So there's this unnecessary pressure. Provider, as we said at the top, the men are the provider, the protector, and you need an erection, mate. Because if you ain't got one, you ain't faking that.
That's right. Listen, I've got 3 minutes before I need to take my
Yes. No, I'll
we're
wrap this up. Yeah, we'll wrap this up now. So people are listening. They've listened and they got it. And they heard it and they said, yeah, and it all makes perfect sense, to be fair. But if someone was looking to do some work in this area, how do they reach you? How do they contact you, Katrina?
Okay, so I have a website, katrinavalente.com, VALENTE. I'm on Instagram every day sharing all about relationships, and I have podcasts on there that you can look at. And yeah.
Amazing. And
I
I mean,
think
that's
me and you, Matt, need to do a class only for men, and you're gonna do your part, I'm gonna do my part, and they're gonna walk away from it a lot more educated.
Gonna teach us. We're a load of men walking out the room, all having orgasms, but they're not. There's nothing else going on. They go, "What's wrong with you?" I go, "I've just had an orgasm." But you're standing in a corridor. I know. I learned it from Katrina. There'll be men all over Dubai in the traffic having orgasms. Everyone's happy, and they've still got energy when they get home.
Doable. It's doable, I'm telling you.
And on that bombshell, Katrina, we will sign off. Katrina, I'll put all the information in the show notes. Great surname, by the way. Thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Matt. Take care.